All right, Flo, you're up. You can do whatever you need to do.
Okay, hello?
Yep, your mic is a little on the soft side.
Is this better?
It's getting there, I think.
Okay, I'll try to be very loud.
Okay.
Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to my talk, Capturing Subtle Emotions Using Choice Mechanics. I'm Florencia Minuzzi, though I usually go by Flo, and I've been making narrative games for 6 years now, mostly visual novels, interactive fiction, and other narrative-heavy games. And I wanted to share some things that I found as I've worked on choice mechanics in games. Obviously, I only have 5 minutes, so I'll keep it brief. So a quick overview. First, I'll be looking at what subtle emotions are and why they're important. I'll use examples to show you how other games use certain choice mechanics to create different subtle emotions in visual novels. And lastly, I'll help you figure out how to choose mechanics that match the emotions you want players to feel. So defining and categorizing emotions and feelings is pretty complicated, but for this talk, I've separated them into just 2 types. Strong emotions are more direct and visceral. They hit the player hard. These are things like joy, anger, and fear. Subtle emotions are a bit more complex. These are things that build up over time or that are more complicated than just being happy or sad. They're things like guilt, fear, and mistrust. I think it can be a bit challenging to convey subtle emotions in visual novels. I mean, after all, they're games where players scroll through text at their own pace. In a lot of ways, they interact with them much like a story. Readers can feel joy when something good happens to the characters or angry if they face an injustice. They're emotions that readers feel on behalf of a character. However, subtle emotions require more than that. A reader's not going to feel guilty if a character does something wrong. They need to be the ones doing something they regret, something they feel guilty about. And similarly, the sense of relief when things go according to plan is stronger if it was the player themselves who crafted the plan. And this is where choices come in, letting the player's own actions affect their feelings. And I know this might seem very basic in terms of interactive storytelling, but visual novels often have choices, so I think it's important to use them as best as you can. Quick reminder, subtle emotions can be captured in a lot of other ways. You can set the tone of the game with your art style, change the mood of a scene using music, or deploy text differently. We've already had talks today about this in terms of the UI and art for your game matching your theme, for example. So I'm just going to be focusing on choice mechanics. So what kinds of choice mechanics lead to which emotions? Let's have a look at what other games have done. So I think very obscure choices can lead to hopelessness. Long Live the Queen is a game that gives players very little information, both in terms of what the choices themselves do, but also what kinds of choices are going to come up in the future. And wrong answers often lead you to death. There's no way you really could have known that that poisonous snake was hiding in the grass, or that not attending this particular dance would get you killed. You're at the whims of fate, with all the choices leading to death, which sort of makes sense because you're a 14-year-old girl trying to make it to your coronation while everyone is trying to kill you. You can end up losing hope as you go in blind, playing a game where it feels like the deck is really unfairly stacked against you. Now let's look at the opposite. Games that give you choices with clear numerical outcomes can make players feel confident. This happens often in stat-raising games or games that show you affection tallies, like Nicole, Amnesia, and I'm sure you know a bunch of others. When you make these choices, you know that your intelligence is going to go up by 1, or someone's affection will go up by 5. And if you don't know, you can probably scroll up and see what the numbers were. It's something that the player can use to work out what kind of outcome they want and then make that outcome happen. When players make a plan and follow it through without that much trouble, they're probably going to feel confident. So the same should hold true in Lady Killer in a Bind. Whenever you make a choice, you know what the direct outcome is going to be. For example, here, if you make the purple choice, you know that the direct outcome is going to be you gain 10 votes and you gain 2 suspicion. But actually, I wasn't really feeling confident as a player. While the choices were transparent in this game, the underlying systems were not quite so straightforward, and as a player, that made me feel uncertain. So if you look at the purple option again, when you choose it, you'll gain 10 votes, which is good, but you also gain 2 suspicion, which is kind of bad. Most of the options feel balanced, so everything is a bit of a trade-off. You need to be weighing options against each other. Also, your options never repeat. You're probably never going to see these 3 choices again in the future. So you can't really plan in the same way you can with stat-raising games. It's not study, read, or sleep Monday through Friday. And that means that while you can see the short-term consequences for each option you choose, you might make a decision that you still don't like in the long run. If I choose purple here because I want the votes, I'm up to 3 suspicion. And that means that if an amazing 2 suspicion option comes up in the future, I won't be able to choose it. And it's kind of because I've backed myself into a corner. So I imagine other players may have felt confident playing Lady Killer. They chose what they wanted because the transparent option means that they can't lose. Wrong choices are being flagged by the game, so they're easy to avoid. However, it led me to feeling uncertain because every option had trade-offs in the future that I couldn't anticipate. I kept thinking, well, what if my suspicion is too high for the rest of the day? Oh, but am I going to regret not getting these votes now? And then I spent way too long figuring out what to choose. So these first 2 examples I looked at were about the transparency of your choices, but let's look at some different sorts of things you can change. So having visible, unavailable choices can lead the player to feeling frustrated. This is easiest to see in Depression Quest, a game where you see various options that you could take in any given situation, if you were in the right mental state. The choices that are crossed out are often the more positive ones, the ones you actually want to select. The fact that you can see a better option but not choose it can lead the player to feeling frustrated. After all, it's right there. You can see the option exists in the game. You can imagine it leading to a better outcome, but you can't click it. You have to go with something else. A NeoCab uses similar mechanics, as your current emotional state affects the options that you can choose. It forbids you from doing certain things, and it gives you an in-character reason why. You as a player might want to choose that option, but your character can't do it at the moment, and it is frustrating. However, NeoCab also does the opposite. It shows you which options are only available thanks to your current emotions. This feels more like expanding your possibility pool, opening things up. And not only that, but your new options match your character's emotions. If Lena is angry due to your earlier choices, then you're going to get options that let you express that anger. It helps you feel close to the character and the game, and it also helps you feel whatever emotion Lena is currently feeling. These additive and subtractive choices in NeoCab are different from each other, but they work well as a pair. They reinforce the fact that emotions are complicated and can lead to better or worse outcomes depending on the situation you're in. So in our last example for today, let's look at one of a few games that gives you the option to look deep into characters' private lives, leading the player to feeling shame. So in Quantum Conscience, you can, at any point, look into characters' minds using this void stream button up here. And very early in the game, they mentioned that 2 people are about to get intimate. And you can go and read their thoughts, as you always can in this game. And maybe you did it without thinking because you press the button every few minutes to see what's on the characters' minds. But in this particular case, you also have the choice to dive even deeper into their mind. And if you do, well, it's not surprising what you're going to end up seeing. But your character isn't happy about it. They say they didn't mean to see that, but you, as the player, know that you did. You read someone's mind, and maybe that part was an accident, but then you made the decision to push a button and dive even deeper. You've gone somewhere the characters wouldn't have wanted you to, not even your own character, and it can make the player feel ashamed. Okay, so hopefully you have an idea of what sorts of choice mechanics lead to which emotions, but how do you choose mechanics to use in your own game? I think there's 2 broad ways to do this, emotions first or mechanics first. If you're working emotions first, figure out what emotions you want the players to feel, ones that match your story's tone and message, for example. And then you can work out how to produce that emotion via your game's mechanics. And looking at other games can be a very good inspiration here. If instead you have a cool mechanic that you want to play with, take a minute to think about what emotions it might elicit. and then ask yourself if that emotion matches what you want your game to feel like. If your choices make people feel like they have no control over anything, but one of your main themes is taking control of your destiny, then maybe you want to try tweaking your mechanics or even changing the story so the two align. So once you've got that down, you can play around with your systems. Let's say you want players' feelings to change throughout the course of your game. So maybe you can try, in the earlier sections of your game, having choices with clearly signaled consequences so the player feels in control. But later, as their situation changes, the effects of their choices are obscured, and they no longer feel in control of their situation. Or you might have sections with very low repercussions, something the player can go through in a very relaxed manner, and then some high-stakes sections, which make the players feel more tense. You should also bear in mind that even if your choice mechanics stay the same throughout the game, players' feelings could change over time. So in learning more about the game systems and exploring the possibility space in Long Live the Queen, players who might have initially felt hopeless start learning from every death, understanding the tools at their disposal. Their ability to live longer and longer helps them feel hopeful until eventually they finish the game. So if you only take one thing away from this talk, it's that you need to inspect your game's choice mechanics. Whichever system you use will affect player emotions, whether you know it or not. Figuring out which emotions you're sparking in them and whether that's what you really want for your game will help you tell more resonant stories. So that's it. Good luck in your games. Thanks for listening. And if there's any questions.
Cool. All right. All right, Aquili, I think you're up next. So I am going to pass you presenter mode. And we're just up for time, so we'll just do all the questions in chat. I think I saw a bunch fly by.